playoffs. Once the match is done, from the field to the office, we're ready to go on the One Star post-game show.
Man, rarely after a football game do I not have am I like speechless? But luckily, we've got our beautiful boys live at AT&T Stadium right now. The athletic father, Jon Machota, and Saad Youssef. John, your thoughts. I'll let you go first, and then we'll let Saad fire away.
Oh, this is so perfect. Saad and I have been talking about this. I have one thought and one thought only. This is partly our fault because have we never in the history of us doing podcasts, have we ever not talked about or talked as little about the opponent as we did going into this one? When we spent all that time talking about The Office on that preview episode, I think that's what did it in. That disrespect, there is no doubt that someone showed that or played that for Derek Carr or Alvin Kamara, and they used that because there's no way. Like, I don't care how bad people will sit there and they'll be like, oh, it's the Cowboys, you should expect these things. They always let us down or whatever. There's no way I expected them to come out here and give up 6 touchdowns on the Saints' first 6 possessions. That is wild. I mean, you can make the argument it's worse than that Packers game. The only reason the Packers game will always be worse is because it's a playoff game and you lose and you go home and your season's over. But I mean, I guess you know what? Maybe it's not that bad if the Saints go on and win the Super Bowl. But that Saints team is not going on to win the Super Bowl. So because of that, stunning. I was trying to do the math on this the other day because I have some friends that their daughters are into cheerleading and stuff like that. And so they've been watching the Netflix series with the Cowboys cheerleaders. And so I was trying to do the math on how many times I've seen them have to dance to Thunderstruck, and kind of tied in with, going to the Green Day concert, seeing you guys there recently and how sick of playing some of their hits they must be. And so when I was doing the math on how many times I've probably seen them do Thunderstruck, I'm like, man, I've been covering this team for 13 years, factoring all that in. Anyways, I'm saying this because I think I've seen them dance to Thunderstruck over 130 times, okay? With all of those 130 times, I'd say game-wise, that's like 115, 120. I don't know, outside the Packers game, I was any more stunned at any of those games than I am right now after seeing what I saw over these last few hours here at AT&T Stadium.
Oh, man. All right, Saad.
Well, I think Trayvon Diggs, when he was asked about just his reaction after the game, he said it was just unacceptable, and that's it. He just left it at that. And I think that's pretty much sums it up pretty well. I just, when you think about why Mike Zimmer was brought in, specifically after, Dan Quinn and everything, it was to fix the run defense. And the run defense was absolutely atrocious. But the pass defense was bad as well, and so was the pass rush. And it was just cumulatively one of the worst games that I've seen the Cowboys play in the regular season. And, the first thing is there's blame to go all the way around, but let's not get it twisted. Number 1, 2, and 3, this is on the defense. And then we can talk about the offense, and there was some stuff later in the game too, but this defense was just so bad. And the biggest thing that makes it unacceptable to me is there's no excuse. You're at home. Jake Ferguson plays tight end. He doesn't play linebacker or defensive end. You had every player at your disposal except for Deron Bland, who's a preseason injury. Like, there was no excuse. And Deron Bland's absence was not the reason this happened in the first place. So you factor all that in, to me, this was one of the worst losses that I've seen in a few years at least.
I'm really stunned at the lack of pass rush. That was my biggest thing. And I understand Derek Carr was getting the ball out quick. But for being a guy that's not very mobile, it's not like you come into this game thinking the Saints have, one of the league's best offensive lines. For guys like Kendricks and Lawrence and Parsons and Overshown to make the plays that they did just a week ago, and then for none of them to really even show up in any big moment at all, like you needed at some point when the bleeding was at its worst, you needed somebody to make some type of a big play. And nobody made one. Nobody stopped the bleeding. And by the time they even were able to get a stop, the game was over.
Yeah, it's like those first 2 Cowboys drives on offense were big long drives that you couldn't finish and keep up. But if you were just watching the game, even though there was the big play on the second drive and the Saints scored on the first drive without much resistance, you're like, well, the offense keep up and it's going to be back and forth all day. So if you like take that out of it even and then go, you just see a game where the team got outplayed. I will say this thing that crept into my mind here. Granted, it's week 2 or whatever, but how much did we talk about, boy, these motion-based offenses, this Shanahan-style offense, and LaFleur and McVay and all these guys seem to give the Cowboys trouble. Got to fix that. Got to be able to beat them in the playoffs. Here comes Mike Zimmer in here. He'll fix it. And this is something that the Saints are kind of, their big storyline that maybe we didn't talk about enough in our preview episode, that they've shifted to using a lot of that. And you saw that. And it did look like that type of offense with Clint Kubiak calling the plays. But, dude, it doesn't matter what kind of offense the Saints were running. The just effort – I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it. Maybe the Saints are better than we think. I doubt it, but I don't even know how to explain that happening again in that building. I heard before the game McCarthy talking about, we love these noon games. It's our only noon game of the year, and we get to go have dinner tonight, and the players love noon games.
Let's hold off on that real quick. Mike loves noon games. Players like playing at night. They like playing in the big moment. Players don't want to be waking up at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning to get to the stadium. I'm not saying that all. I'm sure there are some guys, but Mike loves the noon games. He always has. He's said that since the day he got here. Love that. And I understand, hey, I'm not knocking him for it. They've been pretty damn good in this building for the last 2 seasons. So I'm not knocking on that. But when you talk about that Shanahan defense, you want to talk about, offense or Sean McVay or any of them, well, then tell me this. I don't even need to talk about disciples of the offense. Let's use those gentlemen in particular. The Cowboys have played those teams. They never look as bad as they did today. They never look as bad. You can get that Packers one, but like the times that they've played the Niners, like that whole getting over the hump against the Niners in the playoffs, those are close games. If they had lost a game like the Niners playoff games today, we wouldn't be going on like this and being as critical in whether we're talking about right now or what Saad and I are writing right or for tomorrow morning. There's no excuse for what was going on there. It's not just a scheme thing. I'm sorry. A scheme advantage in the National Football League can win you a game. There's no question about it. But to use a Jason Garrett favorite word, just absolutely bludgeoned. Six possessions, 6 touchdowns. Like you really had no feel. Like there was at one point in that third quarter where Carr throws that wide open touchdown pass and it gets called for a legal man downfield, which, hey, they went back and they talked about it and on the Fox broadcast and they showed the replay. He was, Cesar Ruiz was 2 yards past the line of scrimmage. But it was just denying the inevitable or delaying the inevitable. Yeah, it was gonna, they were gonna come down and score eventually. So that was the most alarming part. It wasn't the offense. Obviously, Brandon Aubrey is this team's most valuable player. He can do no wrong. But that defense, that's embarrassing. And then to have to play the Ravens next week, that doesn't give you a lot of hope either.
The 0-2 Ravens, by the way.
Well,
who will
see how that works.
Needing a win.
Yeah.
The Saad Twitter post is up with every game about the office. Because after one, well, my weaknesses are actually my strengths. Pretty easy when Saad has to resort to a Stanley GIF. We know that things were not good. I'll let you guys go find that on your own at Saad Yusuf 126 on Twitter X. But
we might be calling this one the 1-star office curse game. To me, this is the Jake Paul curse game.
Oh, okay.
Maybe the Cowboys were just starstruck by his appearance,
or Mike Tyson,
celebrity that big in person.
Yeah, it is weird. You're still gonna cowboy up, right? It's still gonna feel like a cowboy. I used to be very leery of the noon home game, the sleepy noon home game. But what's the crowd supposed to do? 6 touchdowns. I don't even know what it's so hard to even. It's so similar to that playoff game. You just
And
I don't even know.
Yeah.
yeah, and KT, it's not even just 6 touchdowns. It's how many different ways they did that too. I mean, you had the 7 play drive to begin things. You had the 1 play strike after that. You had outside zones from Alvin Kamara. You had that touchdown that Kamara ran right up the middle, got skinny up the hole, and ran to the left corner of the end zone. It wasn't one thing. They every single way that you could lose on defense, the Cowboys did, and I think that's probably the most surprising thing is like it wasn't just that the run defense struggled, it was that every part of this defense struggled.
And I'm not one of these people that sits here and goes like, I have never thought that Derek Carr is awful. Like, I think Derek Carr doesn't belong in, like, your top. He's probably not in your top 10 quarterbacks in the league. I don't know if I've ever had him up there, but I know he can make throws, and I know he can win games, particularly when he has time, and he has the offensive line playing well, and clearly he has, not just this game, but again in Week 1 against the Panthers. I get all of that, and I'm very familiar with the work of Alvin Kamara. He's not new to the league. He's been doing this for a long time, so I'm not dismissing any of that. Like, I expect those guys. Like, I don't expect them, but I'm not surprised when they play well. The way Derek Carr and Alvin Kamara played, it would be like if I'm not even going to go 9 o'clock. I'll go 11 o'clock this morning. Both of them went out into the parking lot with people that have been drinking all morning and jumped in on their 11-on-11 two-hand touch game out in the parking lot. Like, that's how dominant they were. It was like they were playing against not even NFL players for most of this game. Like, who out here doesn't know who Alvin Kamara is and what he's capable of? And it certainly didn't look like this Cowboys defense did.
No, there's no doubt. And there's a part of me, John, that in week 2 goes, yeah, well, if I'm going to be in week 1, I'm going to be the type that says, oh, it's just week 1. No one overreact. Well, then I can't do that after week 2. But for that to happen to you at home to what should be an inferior opponent just doesn't allow you to do that. Is there a point in the game that was like we all know it was bad, real bad? Is there a certain point in the game that really sticks out, a certain play that just sticks out as, oh God, it's over, that we have to stop this game?
Yeah, for me, it was Dak missing Zeke in the flat, down in the end zone. I mean, if there was any chance at a comeback, I feel like it went down there. A couple plays later, he fumbles, and honestly, the Saints, if they fall on it, the Cowboys don't even get 3 points out of that. I know a lot of people can say that the game was over a long time before that, but the Cowboys have a decent offense, and I feel like if maybe you get things going again, I blame the defense 1, 2, and 3 for this game. But if you're talking about one play, that short throw to Zeke that would have been a walk-in touchdown comes to mind first.
Yeah, it's tough for me. I know what you're talking about, Sod, and that definitely does stand out. Don't get me wrong. I'm probably going to go with the touchdown in that third quarter, because that was then the 6th consecutive possession where they scored a touchdown. And you're just like, it wouldn't matter if the Cowboys offense was flawless. They're not coming back from that. Your defense cannot get a stop. Like, we're talking about not getting a stop. Like, even if some of those were field goals, I think that they still would have had. But the fact that they're just going down, it was like, it didn't even matter if you got to whatever 3rd and 5. It was like, oh no, this will get converted. And no, just give it 4 or 5 more minutes. They're going to score. It's like, there was no hope that the defense was going to get any stops. And so I'd say probably by that 6th touchdown in the third quarter, I was like, yeah, you can probably pack this one in. And I would say, too, after that happened, that's when I saw the majority of Cowboys fans leaving, which that's not to say that this building was empty, because there was a ton of Saints fans in here. I mean, that Houdat chat was clear throughout the second half. And I mean, hey, I understand why. I mean, you play a game like that, and you should be really pumped about the way your team's. I mean, if you're a Saints fan right now, you got to be geeked, because there's no way you expected your team to be playing that well through 2 weeks of the season. So I'm going to be very interested to see how they look as the season goes on, because they certainly look like a playoff team, especially with the division they're in. I did not think going into the season they were that kind of a team to be able to just destroy their first 2 opponents like that. And so, when we did this pod after the Cleveland game, when I was up in that press box, and I said to you guys that game kind of solidified why I think that the Cowboys remain in there with like the Niners and the Lions and the Eagles as kind of the class and the Packers of the NFC. I still think they're up there. I need to see more, but obviously today made me question a lot of that.
What do you think is more likely, that the Saints are really good, or that the Cowboys and Panthers are just?
I don't think the Cowboys are that bad. I think, I think they laid a really bad egg. Like, I don't think the loss to the Packers was a talent issue. Like, I mean, it wasn't that the team wasn't talented enough. But I think it's somewhere in the middle where I think the Saints probably are a little bit better than at least I gave them credit for. I'll speak for myself. I don't, and against the Browns, there was a lot of things where it gave you cause for pause with the Cowboys. That okay, Deshaun Watson was really bad, and you had to factor that in a little bit. So I wouldn't say the Saints are that much better. I think they are better. I mean, John pointed out like they were a 9-8 team last year. They weren't a bad team last year either. I believe the Packers were 9-8 last year and did that to the Cowboys. So the Saints are probably better. I don't think the Cowboys are as bad as they showed today, but I think they laid a really bad egg.
Yeah, I don't go real heavy one way or the other. I think both these teams look like they're probably somewhere between, I don't know, 9 or 10 win teams, I think. So who knows? Maybe the Saints win the division. Maybe the Cowboys are a wild card and they get a rematch in the playoffs in the Superdome. I don't know, but I don't think any Cowboys fan really wants to see that right now.
Well, the Saints will get the Eagles next week, so we'll get to see how they look. And we might get a little measuring stick on the Falcons a little bit when they take on the Eagles on Monday night. So you get to go with that for us. Now, look, Ravens, you'll get the Giants, Steelers, Lions. So we'll have to look forward to there. I want to go back to something real quick. I just want to mention, like, the Jalen Brooks slip interception, But what I did like about, okay, so that happens. That's terrible. But instead of quitting, get the ball back, try to go score, they go down, playing aggressively, kick a field goal. It's not enough, but like it was still like you go into the half feeling like, what kind of Saad mentioned earlier, like we have a good enough offense to go get points. Wouldn't have mattered. The part of the game though, and I just wanted to ask if y'all have an update on the part of the game for me that was like, okay, we got to get off the field. Was Zach Martin. When Zach Martin's riding an exercise bike on the sideline, you're going, we can't have that to compound all this. Do we have a minor update on him? I know he went back to the game, but just to be clear.
Yeah, Jerry said he was good after the game, and
Cool.
he was able to return. If there was any, especially at that point where this game was going, if there was even any like, hey, this might set him back a week or two, he wouldn't have went back in that game. So no, I think he's good. But yeah, there was a point there where how slowly he got up and how long it took him to get to the medical tent. I did think it was a significant injury, but when I saw him come out of the tent, go on the bike, I knew that they wouldn't have done that if it was something major. They would have taken him immediately right to the locker room. And then for him to go back into that game, and it clearly was not a competitive game at that point, made me really think that, yeah, he's probably fine. And Jerry said he was after the game.
We talked about the weaknesses of the team. Like run defense was a big question. Running the ball a question. It's hard for me to put all of that there, just given the explosive play on drive 2 that you gave up in the passing game. A couple of big plays in the passing game on the first drive, but the Cowboys offense did not run the ball, and maybe the Saints knew you were playing in catch-up mode the whole game, and game theory and all that stuff comes into play there. But the run defense and running the ball are two things you will look at and go, well, no, it's the entire defense and running the ball are the two things you'll look at and go, okay, that wasn't great. Because it's weird when the other team has you pinned down like that, like the Cowboys did to the Browns last week. It's so easy, and it's the Cowboys. It's just so shocking to me that it ended up that way, because I kind of tricked myself after 14-6. Hey, we still got a game here. Moving the ball up and down the field, fine. Defense will get it figured out. And it just never happened. And for that to not happen, I don't know. I hope it's as easy as just, put a Band-Aid on it. But how can you not be concerned?
Oh, yeah, especially when it's a variety of ways. It's obviously Kamara in the run game, but then they're doing one-play touchdown drives on bombs. So, I mean, it's like everything is a factor. So I think that's probably the most disheartening part about it. Also, real quick, I think this might be a scoregami game. Maybe I heard somebody mention that.
Yeah.
So do we owe anybody any money?
I guarantee you we don't owe anybody any money. I'm just in the Discord under picks and predictions.
It is scoregami, but yeah, we did not nail the prediction.
There were a lot of
Unfortunately,
people picking the Saints, including us.
I mean,
You
I'm
know?
friends with a couple of the Saints beat writers, and I was talking to them before the game, and let me just tell you, they weren't expecting this either. This is not like people are just disrespecting us because of the Panthers game. Like they were kind of like, yeah, I mean, I think that they're going to be okay. It seems like it. I mean, the way that game started, but we really don't know for sure. Nobody was expecting it to come out. And to be honest with you, just like I said about the Packers game when it happened, there's not a team in the NFL that there's. I don't care. You can be the biggest Cowboys hater or whatever. There's the prime Kansas City Chiefs, the prime whatever you want to say is Tom Brady's best team in New England. They are not that much better than this Cowboys team that you should be bludgeoning them, scoring 6 touchdowns in the first 6 possessions. And I say that because there is a lot of talent on this Cowboys team. I get today it doesn't look like that, but there really is. Like there's no excuse for them to. Losses are going to happen. I know I'm not going to say that they're one of the top teams in the league. I get that, but nobody should be coming into AT&T Stadium and beating this Cowboys team just like that one in January. You should not be beating them that badly and make it look that easy.
How would you guys interpret Jerry right after the game? We'll start with you, Saad.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was he was trying to keep the perspective, which it's easy to do when it's week 2. It was the same thing. John was mentioning this to me after we got up to the press box, where there's a lot of similarities to like week 3 Cardinals lost last year, where you're able to like kind of console yourself a little bit. It is funny though, because I did ask Jerry. I was like, like this defense has been pretty bad for quite a bit of time in recent years. I was like, why are you not concerned? And he was like, hold on, I didn't say I'm not concerned. And then he went about his answer. So I think he's trying. It's a wait and see. I didn't get a sense of panic from him, but he was giving the Saints a lot of credit. Honestly, a lot more credit than I would give the Saints. And I give the Saints credit, but Jerry was just giving them a whole lot.
Yeah, and I think he wanted to do that on purpose because he's not going to bash Mike McCarthy. And frankly, I don't know how much of this is on Mike McCarthy as opposed on Mike Zimmer. And towards the end, before Jerry talked for probably about 10 minutes, and at the end, he talked about how he's seen Mike Zimmer in Minnesota be able to overcome some bad performances and things like that. And so that's why he has confidence that, that he'll get this fixed and that this isn't going to be something that's going to snowball into, a lot of bad defensive performances. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't expect that either. I did find it entertaining on Twitter as this thing was unraveling. Some people not necessarily taking shots at Mike Zimmer, but whatever, acting like, he doesn't know what he's doing and all that. I mean, he's been doing this for a long time. And I just take myself back to when Dan Quinn left. I thought Mike Zimmer was the best candidate, or one of, if not the best candidates that made the most sense when you factor in everything, the team, where Mike McCarthy is in his contract, where the coaching staff in his contract, all that stuff. You're not going to bring in some young guy that all of a sudden it's going to be the one that, is this now it causes all this drama if he's the heir apparent to McCarthy? Why are you hiring this guy and stuff like that? Like, of all the realistic possibilities that were going to happen, Mike Zimmer made the most sense. And I can't sit there and just completely throw away what happened in Cleveland and then also throw away everything we saw in training camp and just everything that the players have talked about and just act like, oh, no, this is going to be the 2020 Mike Nolan defense. I'm not going to do that. I get it looks terrible right now, but I'm not going to go that far with it. I do think Mike Zimmer will get this fixed.
Yeah, and also real quick on that point, something that stood out to me with Micah after the game was him talking about like, no, it wasn't the scheme. Like we got outplayed, and Micah Parsons previously has said, people get schemed up and things like that, and you can get out schemed or whatever. But today he did say that it wasn't the scheme, that they just got outplayed. And I agree. I think most people thought that Zimmer was the right guy, and there's no reason to really bail on that at this point right now.
And Micah was specifically saying too that the part he's looking forward to the most when he watches the film is he can't wait to see the effort that guys were given when they were down, 3 touchdowns or whatever. Like, let's see who was still bought in and who was still doing their job then. And it just tells you a lot about the character of the player because that film isn't going to lie. And so he sounded like he was genuinely looking forward to watching the game film of a game that I would think most players would just want to burn it.
I got to say, I don't know who I'm going to pick next week, and we can discuss that when we start looking forward to the Ravens. But it would be shocking to see the Baltimore Ravens start a season 0-3. It would also be shocking to see the Cowboys start 1-2 with 2 of those games at home. We got a big doozy next Sunday, which most people don't put big before doozy. They just say we have a doozy next Sunday. We got a big doozy on Sunday, 3:25. We'll be back on Tuesday to talk about it, talk a little bit more about the game, some specific things. We'll have a few updates and things like that. McCarthy will speak to the media on Monday. And then, of course, we'll have the game preview episode later in the week as well on the One Star Cowboys podcast. For our producer, Kent Garrison, for our reporters live on the scene at AT&T Stadium, including John, who posted a picture of the scoreboard says 100 to 100.
Oh, they changed it. They turned it off. Word got to them that we were making jokes.
Yeah. How would anyone want to see more? Even at the Cowboys, just take the loss. You wouldn't even want to run back out there and do more of that.
If it was 100 to 100 and it was going to overtime,
I mean, it'd be fun in theory, but if the game was going the way it was going, how would it be? Yeah. At Jon Machota, JONMACHOTA, at Saad Youssef, SAADYOUSEF, 126. I nailed that, right?
No, you got the
SUF.
you instead of E.
Let you do it. Then, Saad, what's your account?
SAADYOUSUF 126.
The 126 part is usually the part that tricks me. And we'll be back on Tuesday. So yeah, thank you everyone. And I know that game sucked, but we'll do our best to cover it the way we know how to do it. So follow the boys. Talk to you on Tuesday. Goodbye, everyone. Yee. Oh.